The sun blazed over the open field in Ohio, where thousands had gathered to hear President Donald Trump speak. Flags waved, cameras rolled, and the Secret Service stood alert. Trump was visiting a small, forgotten town to speak on law enforcement reforms and rural justice. Among the crowd stood Officer Caleb Myers, a 36-year-old local cop with a quiet demeanor. He wasn't there as security. He was there for something far more personal. Dressed in his uniform, Caleb looked calm, but his mind was racing. For years, he had carried a story on his heart, a truth he'd buried under his badge. Today, something told him. He couldn't stay silent any longer. Trump began speaking, his tone fiery and familiar. "We back the blue. We honor our officers who put their lives on the line. You are the backbone of America." Applause erupted, but Caleb stood still. His hand clenched the small folded letter in his pocket, written not by him, but by someone else, someone who had never been given the chance to speak. Then Trump said something that hit Caleb's core. "If anyone has a story to share about justice, about courage, let's hear it. This is your moment." The words rang like a call. And in that second, Caleb made a decision that would change everything. As Trump paused, scanning the crowd, a hand went up, a firm, gloved hand of a man in uniform. The security team tensed. Trump squinted, surprised. "You, officer, something to say?" Gasps and murmurs flowed through the crowd. Caleb stepped forward, heart pounding. "Yes, sir. But I must ask to speak not as a cop, but as a father." Secret Service hesitated. Trump raised his hand to calm them. "Let him speak." Caleb climbed the platform step slowly, his boots echoed on the wooden stage. He turned toward the crowd, thousands of eyes locked on him. Then he turned to Trump. "Mr. President," he began, voice steady. "3 years ago, my son was taken from me." A hush fell. Trump's face shifted from curiosity to concern. "My son David was 16, bright, kind, and everything I wasn't at that age. He loved music. He volunteered at shelters. He had a future." Caleb's voice cracked, but he continued. "One night driving home from a study session, he was stopped by police, not our department, different county. They said he matched a description. He never came home." Whispers moved through the crowd like wind. Even Trump was silent now. Caleb's hand trembled as he pulled out the letter from his pocket. They found no weapon, no drugs, just his ID, his books, and a broken taillight. He paused, but they still pulled him out, slammed him down. One officer panicked when David resisted, said he feared for his life, and he pulled the trigger. A woman in the front row gasped. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone slipped from someone's hand and hit the grass. "I wasn't just a cop then. I was a father waiting for a son who never came back." Caleb unfolded the letter. David was working on a speech for school. He wanted to be a lawyer. Said he'd fight for those who didn't have a voice. Trump leaned in slightly, his expression unreadable. "This letter," Caleb continued, "is what he wrote. I never read it out loud until now." He cleared his throat. "Dear America," it began. "Justice is not what you say in speeches. It's what you do when no one is watching. When you choose kindness over fear and truth over pride." Caleb stopped. "I don't want vengeance. I want his voice to be heard. Today, right here." A silence unlike any rally overtook the crowd. Even the flags once waving now stood still in the windless afternoon. Caleb's voice echoed through the mic. But it wasn't just sound. It was something deeper. Raw, exposed truth. President Trump stood back, his hands clasped. The teleprompter behind him still glowed, but no one was reading it now. All eyes were on the man in uniform who had chosen to break the silence. Caleb continued reading. "I believe in laws, but laws are just ink without hearts behind them. I believe in officers, but not ones who forget they wear badges to protect, not punish." A few people in the crowd began to wipe away tears. A young mother pulled her son close. "And I believe that one day someone will listen. Not because I shouted, but because I whispered the truth." Caleb's voice broke on the last word. He folded the letter slowly and held it to his chest. "I came here not to shame anyone. I came here to ask Mr. President, Can this country carry his whisper? It was no longer a rally. It was a moment of reckoning. The silence was broken only by the wind. Then President Trump took a step forward. His expression wasn't political. It was human. He reached out not to take the mic, but to place a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "I've given hundreds of speeches," Trump said quietly, "but none have silenced a crowd like yours." The crowd watched, unsure of what would happen next. Trump gestured to the letter. David's words, they remind us that justice isn't about who shouts loudest. It's about who listens deepest. Caleb nodded, eyes filled with emotion. Trump turned to the crowd. Today, this man didn't come as a protester. He came as a father, a cop, an American. And what he asked wasn't for attention. He asked us to remember. Applause didn't erupt. It trickled, then swelled. But it wasn't wild. It was respectful, earnest. Caleb looked down at the mic. "There's one more line in David's letter." Trump stepped aside. "And if I don't make it to tomorrow, let someone speak my truth so others will make it to theirs." The wind picked up again, as if even nature listened. After the rally, Trump invited Caleb backstage, away from cameras and speeches. "I want to know everything," Trump said, gesturing for his advisors to wait outside. Not as a president, as a father. Caleb shared it all. The night of the shooting, the lack of accountability, the internal conflict of wearing a badge while grieving one. "You stayed on the force?" Trump asked, surprised. "I almost quit, but I thought if I leave, who teaches the next guy to do it better?" Trump leaned forward. "What do you want, Caleb?" "I don't want compensation or politics. I want David's name attached to something that teaches empathy in the force nationwide." Trump was quiet. "You're asking for reform. I'm asking for remembrance, with purpose." Trump stood. "Then, let's make something happen. You've got my attention, and now you'll have the nation's." By morning, the story had gone viral. "Cop interrupts Trump leaves rally silent," read one headline. Social media erupted. Hashtags like #David Myers, #Caleb Speaks, and #Silent Rally trended nationwide. Cable news split in opinions. Some praised Caleb's bravery. Others called it emotional grandstanding. But the people, mothers, fathers, veterans, cops, and teachers kept sharing the clip, not because of politics, but because of pain, honesty, and a boy who never made it home. Trump released a statement. What we witnessed wasn't protest. It was patriotism. Within days, David's letter had been read on news shows, classrooms, and even at police academy graduation ceremonies. But Caleb wasn't watching the screens. He was visiting David's grave where a small stone still read, "Loved deeply, remembered always." Now he knew he'd be remembered by many. Back at the precinct, Caleb received a call from Washington. A woman's voice said, "Officer Myers, the president wants to invite you to the White House to discuss an idea." Something in David's name. Caleb hesitated. "Is this symbolic or real?" She responded, "It's real. He wants to create the David Initiative, a nationwide training reform program for community policing with you as its founding advisor." Caleb sat back in his chair, stunned. He'd come to a rally expecting to speak his truth and leave unnoticed. But now his son's name would echo in classrooms, trainings, and town halls. "I'll do it," Caleb said softly. "But only if the heart of it stays." David's letter. The woman replied, "That's exactly what the president wants." A week later, Caleb stood in the Roosevelt Room facing leaders from law enforcement agencies, senators, and educators. Trump entered the room and gestured for him to speak first. Caleb didn't need a script. "We can't legislate empathy, but we can teach it." He shared stories, not statistics. He told of the father he had to arrest who reminded him of himself, the teen he mentored, the child who feared police sirens. David once wrote, "Fear grows where trust is never planted." Silence again, eyes welled with tears. Not from a tragic video, but from a father's quiet fire. Trump nodded. "We're not here to argue. We're here to build." The David Initiative had begun. Though he was traveling more, Caleb stayed grounded in his town. One day, a mother approached him at the grocery store. "My son," He used to be terrified of cops. After watching your speech, he asked if he could write to you. Caleb smiled. Tell him I'd be honored. He read the letter that night. It was a child's scroll saying, I want to be a kind cop like you, like David. It hit him harder than any national headline. David hadn't just been remembered. He was becoming a mirror for change. Months later, Caleb received another letter, but this time from the officer involved in David's death. It was unexpected, painful. I don't expect forgiveness, it began. But your words at the rally changed how I see the world. I resigned. I now work at a center teaching de-escalation in David's name. Caleb stared at the letter for hours. He didn't know how to feel, but he knew this. David had reached someone even he couldn't have imagined. 1 year later, the first David Myers Training Academy opened in Columbus. Funded by federal grants, endorsed by both parties, and rooted in empathy-based policing. At the opening, Trump spoke briefly, then handed the mic to Caleb. Today, a badge isn't just a symbol of authority, Caleb said. It's a promise. A promise to listen, to protect, to remember. He unveiled a plaque, David's photo, and the final line of his letter. Let someone speak my truth, so others will make it to theirs. On opening day, a protester stood outside the academy holding a sign. Too little, too late. Instead of ignoring him, Caleb walked over. You want to talk? He asked. The young man, tense, replied. You're still a cop. What can change? Caleb said nothing. He handed him David's letter. The man read slowly. His shoulders dropped. That was your son? Caleb nodded. Yes, and that's why I'm still wearing the badge. Because change has to come from the inside, too. The man lowered his sign and extended his hand. Months later, President Trump made an unannounced visit to the academy. He toured classrooms, watched role-play sessions, and sat quietly in a session about implicit bias. Afterward, he told the press, this isn't just about one boy. It's about millions of moments where a better decision could save a life. He placed a medal on a wall bearing David's name. Not a medal of honor, a medal of remembrance. The first class graduated from the David Academy. 120 young officers from 20 states. Each received a pin engraved with the word whisper. Caleb explained, it's from David's letter. A whisper of truth can be louder than a shout of hate. Among the graduates was a young woman named Leah who told the crowd, I joined because of David and because Officer Myers showed me that one life, even lost, can guide 1,000 more. Late one night, Caleb sat in David's old room looking through his sketchbooks and journals. He found one note. I want people to feel safe when they see a uniform. He smiled sadly. We're getting there, kid. President Trump, now nearing the end of his second term, called Caleb. This thing you started, it's in 38 states now. Caleb replied, David started it. I just carried the whisper. Trump paused. We're awarding you the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Caleb was silent. I accept it for him. At the ceremony, Trump stood beside Caleb, placing the medal around his neck. But before the crowd applauded, Caleb pulled something from his jacket, David's letter. He handed it to the president. I think he'd want you to keep it. Trump, uncharacteristically emotional, accepted it with a nod. I will. 5 years later, David's story was now taught in police MIs, social justice classes, and leadership seminars. A teacher reported, it's the one part of the course where no student speaks. They just listen. David's whisper had become a national conversation. Years passed. Caleb eventually retired from active duty, but continued to travel, speak, and mentor. One day, he visited a small-town school where a 10-year-old stood up and asked, Do you miss your son? Caleb smiled gently. Every day. The boy nodded. But he's everywhere now. And in that moment, Caleb knew David's whisper had grown into something louder, stronger, and lasting. He hadn't just interrupted a speech. He'd changed a nation's heart.